right, well, thank you guys very much for having me. And I've been asked to kind of introduce the next segment, which is the law and regulation panel, but also kind of to give some high level as to where kind of law and regulation is in the industry, and also try to relate it to what each of us does kind of on a day-to-day basis, because I know that that's something that you guys are hoping to get out of this, and hopefully that we can all provide. So Fasken is an old school full service law firm that is more than 100 years old. It's got hundreds of lawyers from all disciplines. And so one of the challenges that we face in 2018 is figuring out how big law can do business with small tech. And I'm really happy to be here to talk about that, because it is challenging, and I know that the idea of going and talking to like a Bay Street law firm might be intimidating. But I think that what you'll hear from me and from Evan from Osler, another Bay Street firm, is that we're working really hard, because we understand that the next wave of wonderful companies, brilliant technology, and that kind of and successful companies is coming from the next generation, and it's happening so much faster than it did probably a generation ago. So we're forced to kind of adopt some of our traditional business practices to the new reality, and I think we're all of us up on this panel are really excited about it. I would like to introduce a few concepts about the law and regulation. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys this, but the technologies underlying fintech and blockchain have led to some new legal issues, and our current laws are not perfectly suited to deal with those. And this industry has mushroomed so quickly that there hasn't been time for a legislature to actually sit down and write down a new law. And also, it's really hard to foresee where things will be in 2 years. So it might even be a bad idea to do that. And so as a result, we're kind of in something of a holding pattern in some ways in this industry as it relates to legal issues. A good example of this would be robo-advisors. So like Wealthsimple, incredibly successful company, offers some great products to new investors, people who can't afford to go out and get a full investment advisor. Well, the old law would say that if a company wants to give investment advice to anybody, they have to have a meeting with that person. They have to know that person, know what their needs are, make sure that every product that they get is suitable for that person. Well, nowadays, when technology has improved so much, Wealthsimple can create a good suite of portfolio products with enough kind of guidance around it that maybe you don't need to have that conversation. Maybe you don't need to have an expensive advisor there who is going to make things more expensive and perhaps drive away young investors who don't have a portfolio. And so because that kind of business case is so compelling, the law was forced to adapt, and now there are ways for robo-advisors to have exemptions from some of those requirements so that the next generation of investors is not just squirreling their money away under their mattresses and is able to participate in the stock market. Another example is initial coin offerings. So is there anyone here who is not familiar with initial coin offerings or ICOs? Okay, good. Because that allows me to talk a little bit more about the details of them. This is a big issue that I deal with in my practice, being a securities lawyer. And the big question is, when a company does an ICO, what are they really issuing? Are they issuing something that is more like a product, or is it something that's more like a share? And if it's more like a share, then you have to comply with securities laws. And those are extensive, and they're expensive. And it will probably slow you down in terms of raising your hundreds of millions of dollars in Ether that you could probably do overnight if you don't comply with those laws. However, regulators are now wise to this, and so a lot more care needs to go into how you approach that kind of offering. Now, saying a lot more care isn't that helpful, and neither is the law, unfortunately. We've got a case from the 1970s that it's called Pacific Coast, and you may have heard of the U.S. counterpart called the Howey test. And those tests set out when an investment contract is a security, and these ICOs are very similar to investment contracts. So you apply that test, but it's from the 70s, it was not contemplating the idea of an asset that is both, usable on a platform, but also exchangeable as a store of value. And so as a result, we're left kind of in limbo without a perfect law that addresses all of this, and that leads to a lot of gray area and a lot of challenges for people in the industry trying to start out. And that's really the securities law aspect that brought me into the industry. As I mentioned, I'm a securities lawyer, and with so much money being raised in ICOs in 2016 and 2017, securities lawyers across, probably starting in Silicon Valley and then New York and now Toronto, everybody is now aware of this, but nobody quite knows what to do. And so I work with clients who are facing those issues on a daily basis, and it's been fascinating. It's been challenging, and it's been a little bit scary at times because you don't know what the answer is going to be. You don't know how a regulator will react when you try to apply, new facts to law from the 1970s. And so, it's like I said before, it's challenging, a little bit scary, but really exhilarating too, because you get to be at the forefront of cutting-edge law. And it's not just lawyers. So everyone else on the panel tonight is dealing with these issues in their own way, whether it is from a business advisory perspective or from KYC and AML. I mean, with money coming in from all different jurisdictions globally, a ton of work needs to go into combating money laundering. And so hopefully on the panel tonight we can talk about those challenges that we're all facing and all the excitement that goes with it. So we'll turn things over to Amber, I guess.